What's happening, everybody? Trey here, joined again by my dad, Sean, and today on Reactions to the Classics, we're going to be taking a look at the Rolling Stones double album, Exile on Main Street. We've heard their three previous albums before this record, all classics, all really enjoyed those, so it's only natural to listen to this epic masterpiece. And if this is your first time joining us at the channel, we appreciate it. Here at Reactions to the Classics, we take a look back at some of the most classic albums of all time and do a detailed track-by-track review of them. And just like today, it is usually the first time we've heard the record, so if that sounds like something interesting to you, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. And if you'd like to link up with us more, we have a great Facebook page and our Patreon link down below, as well as those other Rolling Stones reviews. But all that to say, let's get into the quick facts.
Yeah, this was released in May of 1972 as a double album, as you already mentioned, Trey. It's the 10th UK album, 12th US album. Many of these songs were recorded in 1969 and 70 at Olympic Studios and also at Jagger's place, Stargroves. Most of the rest of it was done at a French villa house called Nelcote that Keith Richards had rented in 1971 because the Rolling Stones were fleeing Britain because Britain had a 93% tax rate. You guys are in the UK. I don't know what your tax rate is now. I'd love to know. Comment below. But and the tax bill came due, and the boys said they'd already spent all their tax money. Richards gets this place. He lives upstairs, and then he puts the Rolling Stones, the famous Rolling Stones mobile studio, which tons of acts use. They took that, put it in the basement. That caused for kind of a informal environment. A lot of the band members were in and out, which we'll get to that in a little bit, but all kinds of people were dropping by to visit Keith, which I know you're going to cover in a minute, one of the reasons why they were, but they pop in and out on these songs. So an interesting environment, an interesting road to get here.
Yeah, and at this point, Richard's heroin use had reached a high, and so he had a lot of kind of stragglers coming by to see him, as well as just a bunch of other just random musicians jumping in and out. And this caused him to frequently miss the sessions that continued on in the basement. And Jagger and Wyman were also often unable to attend the sessions for other reasons. This left the band in altered forms. This was finally completed with overdub sessions at LA Sunset Sound. Since we had so many different types of musicians, we have so many different musical styles on here. Everything from blues to gospel, straight up rock and roll, swing, little country, so it makes for a unique listen.
Although Jagger was missing frequently in Nelcote because he had just recently had a child and was spending time with the child, he took charge when the last part of the sessions came to LA. He brought in the cream of the crop of studio musicians. He brought in Billy Preston, who was a huge influence that we'll get into, on Dr. John, and so he took this part over. And the final gospel-inflected arrangements of Tumbling Dice, Loving Cup, Let It Loose and Shine a Light were actually inspired by Jagger and Preston's visit to a local evangelical church where Aretha Franklin was recording what would become the live album movie Amazing Grace.
Well, all that to say, let's just dive into this record. We start off with Rocks Off, which continues the great line of openers.
Oh man, this song's banging.
We have Sympathy for the Devil, Give Me Shelter, Brown Sugar, and then we just go into this. So the Stones really know how to start off with a nice rock and roller, which is what this has. And midway through the song, you almost have like a psychedelic infused, almost like Jagger's talking underwater or something. Makes for a very unique vocal shift. The lyrics talk about a guy, I think, that's on heroin or drugs. He can hear people, but they're not there. And he can't feel the pain no more. So that's how I interpreted it, and this is one of my favorites on the album.
Yeah, absolutely up there at the top for me on this album. You'll hear when you first hear the song, the mixing on it is really rough, right? Jagger kind of comes in and out, especially if you're listening to it on headphones. Jagger talked about this album and how he wished he could go back and remix the whole thing because it was just done so bad. He ended up finishing all the mixing because he said everybody else was either drunk or on drugs. This song is kind of notorious for that, although I like it a lot, even though it fades in and out, it's a little muddy. It kind of adds to the charm of this album, and it's kind of grown this album over the years. Next up is Rip This Joint. It's one of the fastest songs the Stones ever recorded, kind of has a rockabilly feel, and they start listing off all these towns or cities in the U.S. that they've performed in, and also supposedly it has some digs in there at the customs officers, Trey, who might want to look at a British band who might have a little history of drug use and how they hassled them throughout the time. Great brass in this and a great piano, which I know you're going to talk about.
Yeah, Nicky Hopkins is fantastic throughout this whole record.
He's tremendous.
I want to key on him here, though, because that piano really just helps propel the song.
Yes.
Mixes great with that saxophone brass section, and he's just very, very talented and is a nice backbone through a lot of these tracks that we hear. Again, I think this was a great song and kind of let us know, again, we already get the different styles in here that we're going to just continue to see and move on to the next track, Shake Your Hips. And this was actually written by Slim Harpo, so sometimes known as Hip Shake. It was Jagger's idea to record this for the record, wanted it to be in the vein of 50s rock and roll. He brings back that characteristic drawl that we hear in songs like Dear Doctor, a little bit even in Wild Horses. That's the vocal performance, that's what sprung up into mind when I heard this.
For some reason, it's one of my favorite songs. I do that hip shake thing. It just sticks in my head, man. I love this song.
It's catchy.
You're going to listen to it the first time, probably go, what in the world? This dude's crazy. But I don't know. Sometimes it's just a song that you just really love. And this is a song that for some reason I really love, all from mixed characteristics all the way through. The instrumentation on it is actually pretty good. That brings us to Casino Boogie. And this has straightforward blues rhythm, which produces the boogie feel. Richard's prominent backing vocals and key saxophone solo are also other features of the track. Struggling to write at this time, Mick was in a writer's block, so he just wrote a bunch of sentences down, ripped them up, threw them in a jar, a hat, whatever, and had different band members pick them out. Whatever order they picked them out in, he just put them down on a sheet of paper. So I'm not going to dissect the lyrics here because they don't make any sense because it was just written this way, but yet it still somehow works with the instrumentation and Mick's vocal performance.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to key in on the backing vocals here. Backing vocals are again another great characteristic of this record, added a nice touch to this song. I enjoyed it as well, and we finish off side one with Tumbling Dice, which was their lead single, peaked at number 7 in the US, 5 in the UK. And the lyrics tell the story of a gambler who can't remain faithful to any woman, and the music backing has that blues boogie woogie rhythm to it. Just a nice groove overall. Again, great backing vocals by Bonetta Fields and Clyde King. This guy pretty much kind of rolling.
Yeah.
He doesn't know what's going to happen next. He says, hey, why don't you take a chance on me, roll me, because I don't even know where I'm going to land, and we'll just kind of see what happens.
Yeah, it really did grow on me. Wyman's gone, so Mick Taylor plays bass, and Mick Jagger plays guitar.
That's something unique in the Stones.
And then Andy Johns, the recording engineer, claims, now this is a huge wide range here, he says the song was recorded between 30 and 150 times. So I don't know how you can't, 30 and 150, I think you could ballpark a little more than that. But needless to say, they spent a lot of time on this song. It shows. It is one of my favorites on here. Standout track. Excellent way to start and end side one. Powerhouse. Now we go to side two, which is kind of famous for being folk and country inspired. I don't know if they did that on purpose. They never mentioned they did, but it kind of lines up that way. Sweet Virginia is the first song on this side. Started being recorded in 1970. They finished it in 72 in the studio. Jagger plays a harmonica. Keys has a nice saxophone on here. And this song really, Trey, is all about drugs.
It had a more relaxed nature to the song, even though we were dealing with the mature subject matter of drug use, which is the lyrics dive out and it's really prevalent in. And it just got us in store for what the rest of this side two offered. So I enjoyed it, and takes us to the next song, Torn and Frayed, which has been described as a 3-chord honky-tonk. Not typically country per se, but it progresses the chords and brings to mind gospel music. And here, essentially, a guy, coat is torn and frayed, and he's kind of on the outs, but he can still pick up his guitar and steal people's love. And almost reminded me of just real life, how we put up celebrities and musicians, even if they're in dire straits with drug use or relational issues, as long as they can steal our hearts with their music, we kind of just
overlook everything, man. For people with talent, we do the same thing with athletes. Yeah, this is, I like the story of it, the little vagabond musician. I think this one I'll point out too, like the opening track, the mixing on it's a little tough at times. Mick is kind of drowned out by the instruments. Not anything that's a deal breaker. Next up is Sweet Black Angel, country blues song. One of the most outright political songs the Stones ever wrote. It's about activist Angela Davis, who was in prison at the time for her civil rights activism. Great backing vocals on it, interesting instrumentation on it.
Yeah, and I kind of reminded me of Street Fighting Man, not musically, but just in this political sphere, because the
Yeah.
Stones, you're right, don't, at least what we've heard, haven't, put a ton of political songs out there, but this one was, I love the story behind it.
Yeah.
It kind of brought to mind, like, man, what would you do if you were in her situation at that time? The judge is a murdering judge. He's judged her brothers before, and now he's about to judge her, so you felt for the person in the song there, and I really enjoyed this one as well. And then that takes us to the next song, Loving Cup, where the narrator begs for those around him to understand what he understands so that they too can experience what it's like to, quote, take a little drink from a loving cup. Pretty much you just got to push through the grim realities of life and just grasp onto any joy that you can.
On the bridge here, it repeats and then it builds on the eerie bridge of Rocks Off, the album's opener. So that was kind of a interesting way to start to piece this album together just a little bit, give it a little bit of symmetry. I thought the song was really good. First listen to this, was one of my favorites, and it kind of stuck that way on multiple listens. We start off side 3 with Happy. It's credited songwriting-wise to Richards and Jagger, but Jagger wasn't even there. Keith said later on he wrote it in one afternoon at Nelcote. They went downstairs, they recorded it, they mixed it. He said they were done in 4 hours. Actually released as a single, went to number 22 on the Hot 100. The only Richards song, Trey, to ever reach the Hot 100. It's a good song. It's not my favorite lead vocal of his by any means. I'm surprised it was released as a single. I'm surprised it went to number 22.
And there were some funny lines. He's a wild man. He doesn't care. He says he always takes candy from strangers, which of course is what everybody tells you not to do. So he's just
a rebel, man.
Yeah, he's just living crazy. And like you, it wasn't one of my favorites or anything, but it was a nice break in the action to have Keith, I think, get a lead vocal smack dab in the middle of the album. And then we go to a Turd on the Run. Funny title.
Title.
You kind of hear a title like that and think the song's gonna suck, but it didn't.
No, it didn't.
Keith had one of his best performances on here. Instrumentally, it was definitely a highlight compared to the lyrics.
It's fine with me. The instrumentation, once again, as you said, is great. And that moves us on to Ventilator Blues. Marks the only time Taylor was given a songwriting credit alongside Jagger and Richards. Features Richards on the electric slide guitar, electric and acoustic guitars. Taylor's on the lead guitar during the outro, and Jagger is on the vocals.
On those vocals, they double track them, which is rare in a Stones song, and it serves this track very well. This was one of my favorites for sure. Just another, as the song suggests, a blues type of number. And here, Jagger just notes and observes how everybody's going so fast. Eventually, they're all going to need a ventilator.
Yeah.
And at the end, he poses the question, are you going to fight it or what, essentially? So I enjoyed that because it asked the listener some hard-hitting questions. And, everybody is hustling and bustling usually everywhere around you. So we might need some ventilator blues here pretty soon in 2019, 2020, but then that's just going to move us right along to the next song.
I just want to see his face. Jagger commented that they just made this up in kind of one afternoon again with Taylor and Charlie. They were just in there. Taylor and Charlie were in there just playing their instruments, just jamming along, and Mick just jumped in and made up the lyrics on the run. If you read the lyrics, you realize he did make them up on the run, but once again, they're spot on. It's hard for me to believe when you listen to this album on multiple listens that a lot of these guys were strung out or drunk or high at the time they made it, because
for real.
The instrumentation on this whole album is spot on. But another song that worked for me it was good, not great, but good is good.
No, I actually enjoyed this quite a bit because it just had it fades in and fades out, so it's unique there. It has a very murky kind of...
Murky's a good,
dirty rock type of feel, and Jagger in there. I think this guy's at a trial of faith, the protagonist. He's down and on live. He doesn't want to walk or talk about Jesus. He just wants to see his face and, just have his faith be, seen. So I think that's something some people can relate to. And I dug this one. And then we go to the next song. Let It Loose was actually the longest song on the album at 5 minutes, 18 seconds. It's a emotional gospel blues ballad, and portions of the lyrics were lifted from the song Man of Constant Sorrow. At the end of the day, this guy knows she's going to use him and discard him, but he can't resist those bedroom blues.
Kind of a gospel tinge to it, which is the influence of Billy Preston and going to that church that Jagger was going through during that time in LA. I like the song. I think it's really good. You read the lyrics, they are interesting. The bedroom blues, can't get away because of that. So this one worked for me. I thought it was a good way to end side 3. Let's start off side 4 with All Down the Line. This was originally supposed to be the lead single, Trey, but they released it as the B-side to Happy later on. It's just a straightforward rockin' song. The Stones actually gave it a demo of it to an LA radio station so they could go get out in the car and drive around while the radio station played it so they could hear what it sounded like. So I thought that was an interesting part of the song.
Yeah, and lyrically, he needs a sanctified girl with a sanctified mind, a shot of salvation. So I think this guy's wild days, he wants to almost put him behind him.
Yeah, he wants a girl who's going to ground him and kind of keep him on the straight and narrow.
Exactly, which is, something probably a little autobiographical for some of the Stones guys.
You think?
So, I like you. I thought it was just a good rock and roller. And we go to the next song, Stop Breaking Down, which was written by Robert Johnson, the legend, back in 1937. They reinterpreted, the Stones did, this song a little bit differently. Had, again, some nice instrumentation, obviously very blues-based if it's coming from Robert Johnson. You go around telling all these girls, hey, stop breaking down on me. These women aren't great in this man's life. One even pulls a gun on him. So,
yeah, the guitar on this was awesome, and I already mentioned. But one thing interesting about Johnson's lyrics is there's a lot of them. A lot of times on some songs from like the 50s, 60s, you hardly have any lyrics. But his, way back in the 30s, they all tell a story, and this one told one I thought was pretty darn good. Next up is Shine a Light. This is credited to Jagger and Richards, but it's actually a Jagger Leon Russell penned song. And they originally started writing it when Brian Jones was still with the Stones in 1968, and it's about his ever declining drug addiction, and what it did is he detached from the band. And when you understand that and read the lyrics, it's a very powerful song, and actually my favorite one on this whole album.
I think I'd have to echo you on that. This was my favorite. Right. This should have ended the album, honestly.
Yes, it should have.
I think so, because you have that organ in there, which is unique up to this point in the album. It, again, has that gospel tinge.
That's just tremendous.
Towards the end of the song, the angels start tapping their wings and sighing for him to come up. And I thought it was a good tribute to Jones, in a sense, and also kind of a warning to maybe even some of the band members that were in the group at that moment by the time Jagger completed the song. So all in all, my favorite song on the album.
Yeah, now we're going to end with Soul Survivor, and I think, Trey, you already hit it on the head. I'm not really going to get into this much. It's okay. It's one of my least favorite songs on the album, and not the way to end this epic endeavor, but for me, it was all right.
I'd agree with you there. Definitely kind of towards the bottom for me. From what I got out of it, this guy's drowning in this girl's love.
Yeah.
Maybe has done the same to many other guys before, and he's going to wonder, man, am I going to get out of this one alive? Can I be the one that kind of breaks through with it? But, I think if we just flip-flop these final 2 tracks, it would have just...
That's a good idea.
Ended it. But all that to say... Great album, and that'll take us to our favorite tracks. Already mentioned, of course, Shine a Light, Rocks Off would be up there, Ventilator Blues.
Shine a Light rocks off for me, and that brings us to the overall grade. Trey, this is the most critically acclaimed album, but we've run into this with Zepp lately. We've run into it with Hendrix. We're on kind of a double album run here. Double albums are tough, and this is just like the Zepp album, just like Physical Graffiti. It goes over a period of time.
Yeah.
So it gives you an interesting insight. But because of that, it's really hard to get 18 songs that are going to be super strong. So I'm still going to give it a high grade, but it's not my favorite of the 4 that we have just done. Sticky Fingers actually is. I would give this a 9.0.
I think you brought up many great points there, and even though it is 18 tracks, there's not a ton of filler in here.
No, there's not a ton of filler, no.
But I'm with you, double albums naturally, I think it's tougher for it to compare to like Sticky Fingers with its shorter set list, but all that to say, I really did dig this, and the amount of different genres that were employed here. I really dug it. I'm going to be in that 9.0 range myself.
You just love this 4-album run that they're on, starting with Beggar's Banquet.
Absolutely. Got to be one of the best in rock history. And let us know what your thoughts on Exile are down in the comments, your favorite tracks, where it ranks in this 4-album run. And Dad, as always, appreciate all the
Pleasure.
research. If you enjoy this video, y'all be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. We upload multiple times a week in a variety of genres. And until next time, y'all, happy listening. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see ya.